really shows that they're making a lot of progress.
Their style of play, compared to someone that you see in the ACC?
Florida State is probably somebody that similarly plays that aggressive defensive style where they make it difficult for you to run your stuff. You have to simplify your packages, and your players have to make more plays in these kinds of games. It's less about coaches and play calling and things of that nature, and it is more about your players playing confidently and making good fundamental basketball plays against pressure defense. And I said they've done a nice job of mixing in zone. I thought it was effective against Virginia the other day. It was a little bit effective against us last year some. So we know that the way they play is not something that you see every week. You only see it a few times a year, and Florida State is probably the team in our league that is the most like that.
You guys have both had your fair share of injuries. Just how does that play into?
It's hard for both of us. I think you can see there are times when it's just the rhythm and timing of your team is not as good as it should be, and you're not as confident because you've got guys out there that aren't quite as confident. It was watching our film from last year's game. We looked like a confident team. Like, it was just evident. Coach Simmons, one of our new coaches, like, that was one thing that he thought jumped right off the page, was just how our guys were pretty poised and very comfortable and confident and aggressive, and we didn't always make good plays, but there was no hesitation. And I think when you don't have everybody all the time practicing, Frank's going through the same thing where it's just your practices aren't as good, and so you're not competing as hard against each other as you need to. And then when you get in very challenging games, guys break down because they're just not used to doing it as much. And you're also doing it with guys that probably aren't quite as talented and experienced. And it's it's something you deal with, but it is good experience for the guys that are getting it.
How is Marquise?
He's doing better. He might have an outside chance of playing Saturday some. He suited up yesterday and did mostly non-contact work. He did do a little bit of, we had him in a few defensive things that were probably 3/4 speed. Today he's going to try to do a little bit more, and we'll just see how it responds. But he's improved a lot in the last probably 2 to 3 days, and again, it's probably more of a game time decision. Some will be based on how he does in the parts of practice that he does today.
With the way Eli played on Tuesday, do you see him progressing?
Yeah, I think Eli is, much better than he was at the start of the season, and it's like I said a while back. He just needed 2-3 weeks of consistent practices and just work himself into shape, confidence, just comfortable in the offense again, and then guys playing with him. I think the other thing is when you don't play with a guy like Eli, you're just not used to having a guy who's that good. And so you're not looking inside quite as much. And now all of a sudden he's out there every day in practice, and the head coach is saying, hey, we got to make sure we're looking inside. And now, instead of ball reversal, it's a catch and a look inside. And so our team is getting better at finding him because we've been in practice for 2 weeks hearing that message. And, he certainly is moving up and down the floor better. He's guarding better. He just needed time. And he started to do that. He's staying after. He's doing all the things he needs to do to be a good player. And so I'm comfortable and confident that he's starting to play his best basketball this season.
That game against Michigan that South Carolina had, is that maybe for 3/4 of that game the best they've played this year, even though it was a loss?
Probably, yeah, I think so. I mean, and I thought they played well for they probably played well 28-30 minutes of the Virginia game. I really, and that's part of how this works. When you play really good teams like that, you're going to play well, and not always win. I always tell you guys that's one of the challenging things about coaching is when your team is playing hard and playing well and it doesn't result in a win, you got to go back out there the next day and still compete and fight, but I thought they looked really, really good in the Michigan game. To go into that environment against a team who's playing about as well as anybody in the country, and to play them the way they did, I thought with young players, I thought, you know, really showed a lot. And then to back it up, you know, again, I think both those teams are potentially Final Four teams, and to play Virginia in a good way for a long period of the game speaks to the fact that South Carolina is really improving. They're turning the corner. Their kids are getting better. They're freshmen, you know, and I think some of his, he's getting, it looks like he's getting a little more comfortable with some of his lineups and what he's doing. And obviously in the Virginia game, they did it without a couple kids. So, you know, he and I we've both had to deal with a little bit of injury stuff. And, you know, I feel like they're turning the corner, though, and looking at the way they're playing.
You obviously don't want an injury, but is there a bright side in that you're getting some of these younger guys some playing time in the big spots?
Yeah, I mean, it's good that guys are getting more minutes. You know, we certainly, you know, like even if Marquise plays, you know, he really hasn't practiced much for 3 weeks, and so he's not going to be, you know, in great rhythm and timing and all those kinds of things. So, you know, that part of it is always hard, and just getting guys back from injury. But obviously the bright side is hopefully that, you know, Clyde Trapp has gotten to play 28, 29 minutes a game for 3 games. John Newman's minutes he's probably gotten 8, 10 more minutes. Hunter Tyson's probably got 3 or 4 more minutes, 5 more minutes. So there, you know, there is a benefit to some other guys if they take advantage of it. And, you know, we'll see how it goes here moving forward. But, you know, it's nice that those guys are getting some extra time right now. You know, what's best for our team in the long run is we need to get everybody healthy, get back to where we can practice against one another and develop some rhythm and flow, and that's what we need to do.
Brad, you've been around a while, your rivalry, it's a little different than the football as far as intensity, but what's when you look back at the rivalry since you've been here, what's something that you can look at and go, that was just one of those moments where it just made you think, yeah, this is a rivalry, either with a fan or in the game experience?
Well, I mean, you go to both places, and, you know, you're probably going to get called a few names, and it's a little bit more intense. You can tell that, you know, you watch sometimes the crowds of their games or our games leading into the games, and they're not as good as them when we usually play each other. There's more people there. They're a little more animated. There's a little more juice in the building. It's you can feel that it's important, and, you know, both teams, you know, are really compete hard in the game, and so, yeah, from that standpoint, there's no doubt that you can tell it's a little bit of a different game than some of the others we play. It certainly more resembles, you know, an important ACC game. It feels like that for us, that, you know, a big game in your league against somebody that is doing well. And, you know, I think there's a healthy respect between the programs and the coaches. You know, Frank and I like each other and get along really well, and we both, I think, feel similarly about how the game should be played, and so there's a respect in how we do things. We don't do things exactly the same, but because of that, you know, he and I have always gotten along and had a mutual respect for how the other person does their job and competes at it and the way that the kids on the teams play. So from that standpoint, I think it's always been very good, but at the same time, it's very competitive. Both teams really want to win, and the kids on both teams really compete hard in the game.